Will the circle be unbroken by and by and by?
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
This is Jason Kwasnicki.
And we're here to reap the spoils. Yay!
Dun, 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 dun.
This is a podcast where we talk about a game that we decide ahead of time. We told you what the game was at the end of the last episode. Hopefully you were listening. And now we're just going to spoil the hell out of it. We're going to talk about it front to back, top to bottom, spoil the story, spoil the gameplay, and whatever the hell else. We're just going to talk about it.
Spoilers. BioShock Infinite is a first-person shooter.
All right, I was going to ask Delaila to tell us what the game is, but Jason kind of just spoiled it. How fitting.
I can take the next game.
Yes, we're
Oh
talking
shit,
about...
sorry. I missed the note there.
Oh my god.
No worries.
I didn't get the memo, guys. Sorry to our audience. My apologies.
So we're going to be talking about BioShock Infinite. So, obviously, disclaimer. We're about to talk about BioShock Infinite. We're about to spoil BioShock Infinite. If you've not played BioShock Infinite, don't listen to this episode. Pause it right now. Go play that game. It's free on PlayStation Plus for the next week.
A few days.
A few days by the time this episode comes out. So if you've not downloaded that or redeemed it at the very least, go do that like right this second. The whole BioShock collection is available for free on PlayStation Plus. That includes BioShock, BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite. We did an episode on BioShock. It was our second episode ever.
Yeah.
So you'll have so much listening material to have after completing those two games. Just so much of our voices just coming at you. I was going to say live, but not really.
And the collection also has a DLC, but we won't be spoiling that today. We'll do that another day.
Yeah, we'll get to that at the bottom of the episode. But first, before I can't even make a joke about like diving into the ocean. Like to
No.
Rapture.
You can dive into the sky.
You're kind of dive into the sky.
Yeah.
Do you believe you can fly? Yeah, we're going to delve into the history of BioShock Infinite. Not too much. This game kind of has a loaded history. If I was going to give a full history lesson on this, it would probably take up the entire episode. So I'm just going to give some brief bullet points, just some dates and stuff. So are we ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be like not nearly as interesting as the actual story, but development for BioShock Infinite began at Irrational Games, the developer. They started immediately after completing BioShock in 2007. The first BioShock came out in 2007. This game started development like soon after that and was developed in secrecy for 2.5 years. The code name for it was Project Icarus, which is also rather fitting.
Yes.
I didn't know that before reading into it. And that's really, I like that. That's really interesting. The game was officially revealed August 12th, 2010. Did you guys watch that reveal trailer by any chance?
I remember it.
I see. I don't remember ever seeing it, and I watched it for the first time prior to starting this recording, and
I just remember Elizabeth.
yeah,
like being featured prominently. Yeah.
and I was reading some more like her appearance in that trailer, which was very obviously a lot different from how she looks in the final game. It's actually because of a cosplayer. A Russian cosplayer, I believe she was Russian, cosplayed Elizabeth, and the developers found that she portrayed the character so well that they hired her as the official live action representation of Elizabeth, and kind of changed her
Very good.
her appearance in the game to more so resemble the cosplayer. Which I thought was really cool. I thought that was a really neat little bit of trivia I wanted to share.
Good for her.
Yeah, right? Like, she's now completely forever immortalized. But anyway, the initial release date was set for October 2012, which was later delayed and pushed to be released on February 26th, 2013. So this game sort of had a pretty long and tumultuous development cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got the release date wrong. The release date was actually March 26th, not February 26th. That's my mistake.
Come on, Mark.
I'm sorry. I'm giving a history lesson and I'm making up fake history.
Unacceptable.
Something of note, this game came out for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC. This was about 6 months before next gen hit. This is kind of like another game that we're planning on playing this year that I won't name yet. But it came out like right before next gen hit, and obviously eventually got later ported to next gen systems. That's what we played it on. We all played it on PS4. Thank you, PlayStation Plus. But yeah, to finish up our history lesson, Irrational Games, it's kind of surprising. I think this has a lot to do with Ken Levine, though. He scaled back Irrational Games, or Irrational Games got scaled back significantly, dropping its employee count. I think down from like the 200s, 300s, down to, I believe today there's about 70 people.
Wow.
And it's no longer called Irrational Games. It is, as of 2017, it is called Ghost Story Games, who I believe...
We didn't even
sure.
plan that. We just did that in time. we got a bit of a connection going on.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain, like 99% certain, Ghost Story Games has yet to release a game under that moniker. So, kind of curious what's going on there.
Yeah. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Neither did I.
I did, and I forgot, and I reminded myself. So... yeah, that's our very brief, like 3-minute truncated history of BioShock Infinite. There is so much more to read into the development of this game because it had such a long development cycle. Yeah, like
it was caught in development hell. They had to bring in a new director to kind of get the project out the door.
Like roughly 6 years. So that being said, let's dive upwards.
Yeah.
Into the
puns. Like it.
The clouds.
Like it.
All right. The first thing I want to talk about is, I guess, the first thing in the game, the opening of the game. I kind of want to like bookend us real fast. I want to talk about the opening, and then I want to talk about the ending, because I feel like the ending is going to take up so much time, and we need to talk about it. But let's talk about the opening, because I feel like this opening really tried really hard to completely recapture the first game.
Yeah, the BioShock, the lighthouse, it wasn't a bathysphere, but it did the opposite.
Rocket.
It was a rocket.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, okay, this is just like the old BioShock, but eventually I was towards the end, you're like, oh, okay, I see why they did that.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, I suppose so, but yeah, when you bring it up, when you put it that way, I guess it kind of makes sense. To pretty much ape that entire opening, like even down to he's on a boat and he's got this mysterious box with things in there that you don't quite understand, and you go up to the lighthouse and it fires you up, and through the clouds you can finally see this city in the sky. And I feel like it was less effective because we didn't have some epic inspirational, let's call it, speech from the enigmatic and charismatic Andrew Ryan. We just kind of had like nothing.
Yeah.
It was just like Booker sometimes talking to himself, flying into the sky.
I think that's the key problem. I mean, right there is that this dude, Booker DeWitt, the character that you play as, he gets locked in a rocket at the top of a lighthouse in the middle of the ocean, shot into the sky, and there's a fucking floating city sitting up in the clouds. He plummets down into that floating city, comes out, and there are just some weird priests around. And, I could only think of what my reaction would be in that situation. And he just says to himself, like, oh, these guys, he's like looking around at all the priests and whatnot in the temple, like doing baptisms. It's like, oh, these religious people are weird. Like that's his only reaction to being in a fucking flying city. Like what?
And I think a lot of why, I don't know. I think to go back to
it's as if he already knew there was like this is just commonplace in 1912 America.
Well, for him to be kind of weirded out and I guess taken aback by the priests and whatnot, it kind of can be explained by the ending, where we find out that the Booker we're playing as is a Booker from a reality where he didn't accept a baptism.
Yeah.
To cleanse him of his wrongdoings and his sins that he committed at Wounded Knee.
Yeah,
we'll get into that. But yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with Booker actually being a character, complete with a voice actor who talks.
Yeah.
Troy Baker being the
it was actor. Troy?
Yes, it was Troy. It was Troy Baker who plays Booker DeWitt. The fact that he has a voice, Jack didn't have a voice in the original BioShock. He did not talk. By the way,
a face.
By the way, just because I've been bringing up the original BioShock, let's try not to spoil too much of the original BioShock. I mean, this game kind of spoils quite a bit.
Yeah.
But just to be safe, let's try not to spoil too much.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think Booker having a voice and talking to himself kind of has a lot to do with kind of, I guess, not fully recapturing just like the view that we get. The first view we get of Rapture is so much more swooping than the first view we get of Columbia, because we're getting this very influential speech over it with like perfect timing as far as I'm concerned.
We also have somebody guiding us in the original BioShock, whereas here he's just by himself. Yeah. There's no like audio.
Oh, I'm not even talking past like him landing into Columbia. I just mean like up until that point, like they just really tried to repeat history, I suppose.
The beginning here is, I believe, a lot more focused on establishing DeWitt and exposition thereof, and like his story and why he's here, rather than the setting and setting up, why things are happening around you the way they are.
Yeah.
As opposed to the first game, and I think that's and this will be a theme of mine throughout this entire analysis review, whatever you want to call it. I would have preferred like a blank slate character who not necessarily is uninvolved. Obviously, I think a lot of the things that are revealed towards the end could have still gone on that way, but I wouldn't have had such a. I don't know if I'd go as far to say take away the voice protagonist element, but
well, Jason, maybe there's a dimension where Booker is a mute.
Maybe,
and he is just a blank slate character.
Maybe.
Very possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's a good segue to talk about the ending, right? Like, we just want to get into the ending.
Just far fucking more interesting than the opening.
Oh yeah, I know. I wanted to talk about the opening because that's like the first thing I notice with when starting the game. Just lots of parallels to the opening of the first BioShock, but the ending could not be more different.
Yeah, so Booker DeWitt is Comstock, who was seemingly the biggest villain throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I just want to say real fast, is like some inside baseball with Reap the Spoils. Is that
wait, hold on.
What?
He is Comstock? I interpreted it as he had given his child to Comstock.
Hold on, because I just want to say real quick. All right, I started to type out. Sometimes in the notes for this show, I type out like a quick, short summation of everything that happens at the ending of the game. And I started with this game, and I got like 5 or 6 lines down before realizing, no, I can't do this. I can't just have this whole note sheet just be the fucking ending of this game, because it's so loaded. There's so much. Damn.
Because I interpreted it as he had to die so that he never had the child to begin with to give to Comstock. I thought Comstock was the preacher who was trying to cleanse him.
No. So
and you guys are gonna have to explain to me.
Yeah, this is kind of what I thought was gonna happen.
Where it told you, and this is kind of the problem, is that like the far more interesting elements that start occurring in the latter third of the game are left completely untouched, really, for the first 2/3 of the game. The first 2/3 of the game focus on trying to, because the original BioShock was famous for, touching on philosophy and political stuff, but the politics and the philosophy they tried to run through this one were just really uninteresting, and the far more interesting shit was the almost philosophical shit that comes in at the end.
I think whereas the original did focus more on philosophy, and it was much more focused on world building. This one was much more focused on a character-driven narrative. And that another thing that I kind of was iffy on with this game as compared to the original. Sorry to keep comparing this game to the original. They're very similar but very different games. Was the audio diaries in the first game, I felt painted a better picture of life in Rapture, and also told you these really interesting and thought-provoking stories with these characters, and if you got all the audio diaries, you piece that story together.
They explain the characters you're interacting with and how they became what they are.
Right. This game mostly focused on trying to the enemies and characters you knew. It tried to sprinkle little bits throughout the entire game of just those same people, and also sprinkling in bits about the science and the revelations you would find out later without giving it away. And I felt like there was a lot lost in translation there, because even by the end, after going through the ending, I had to look so much shit up, and I'm seeing citations saying, "Oh, it's said in this audio or this voxophone. It's said in this voxophone. It's said in," and I'm like,
and that's such a poor way to tell a story to begin with. Like the original one, you could enjoy it without listening to any of it. It just enhanced the experience.
Yeah, and while I don't completely agree that it's a bad way to tell a story, it's the fact that this game doesn't give you enough explanation of how things went down, and you're kind of just left trying to figure it out and put the pieces back together. And I found all the voxophones. I needed to read a lot to fully understand this. Sorry, go ahead, Delaila.
No, I mean, the voxophones were definitely more interesting in Rapture, and I think that had everything to do with Columbia was kind of very much mirrored America. And so there's a lot of like actual like American history baked into that, whereas the history of Rapture was like it was almost like fantastic. Like it wasn't real. It wasn't anything a part of any history. It's like a whole world created in itself underwater. And so we needed to understand like how that city was created and how the people in it were impacted, whereas here it's like this is mirroring like actual history in a way, and so they didn't really need to provide the world building in voxophones as much, which made them less interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, some of them were interesting. They just like it wasn't as effective, and it was effective in different ways in this game than it was in the first. But enough of comparing the two. I need to stop that. I don't want to promote that. What I do want to talk about is the ending. So let's talk about the ending.
Yeah, all right. So explain to me where exactly the story indicates that you are Comstock.
So like right at the very end when Booker realizes that, or when Booker's telling Elizabeth after they find all the doors and they go through the lighthouse, and he's like, well, we have to stop, like the only way to stop him, because he says that he's dead. He says that Comstock's dead. Elizabeth's like, no, he's not. He exists somewhere. And Booker's like, okay, let's go back to where he was born. And she brings him to that door, and through that door, Booker's at the baptism that he went to. And the whole deal is that all these lighthouses, all these doors represent different different realities. Imagine
Yeah,
branching
I get that.
paths where if like you went through this path or this path, things are completely different. And it all comes back to that baptism, where the Booker we play as exists in a reality where he didn't accept the baptism. He was Booker DeWitt. He had a daughter and got into crippling debt and sold his daughter.
But there's
Okay?
also the scene where you're running as Booker
Right. Now hold on.
at Comstock.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Now now if there's a reality where Booker declines the baptism, which is the Booker we play as, then surely there's a reality where he
And it
doesn't.
was Comstock, and it was Comstock giving the baptism.
No,
That's where I'm.
no. If there's a reality where Booker declines the baptism, there's also a reality where he accepts the baptism.
Yeah, but that's not my problem. My problem is that
Hold on,
Comstock
hold
is
on.
giving the
No,
baptism.
he's not. No, he's not. Hold on. Stop. But there's a reality.
He looks a hell of a lot like him.
He's not. He's not. It's not Comstock. There's a
Okay,
reality.
okay.
There's a reality where Booker accepts the baptism, becomes a deeply religious man, and is born again. Changes his name as a born again man to Zachary Hale Comstock.
Okay.
So, and in that reality, he meets Robert Lutece, and Robert. These are two of my favorite characters. Are so interesting. Robert and Rosalind Lutece are not twins, but the same person existing in two different dimensions.
Yes. So can I say something about this real quick?
Yes.
Did you guys notice when you're on one of the gondolas and you see the Lutece twins playing baseball, like the Robert is throwing the ball at Rosalind and then she like bunts it, and then as you keep going on the gondola, he's painting her while she's holding an apple. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
So I didn't notice this till I played 1999 mode. If you turn around and look at the painting, it's a painting of himself. I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I love that. But yeah, to your point, they're the same person.
Yeah, they they are the same person. Just from two different realities. One reality where they were born as Robert, one reality where they were born as Rosalind. Robert existed in Booker's reality, whereas Rosalind existed, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, no, you're right.
No, I'm right.
Comstock's
Rosalind
reality
exists in
was
Comstock.
Rosalind.
And Rosalind developed the Lutece particle, which is
How the fuck did you figure that out?
I read a lot.
Yeah.
It's that's the thing, is like this stuff is explained in some voxophones, but it's like puzzle
But it needs
pieces
to be
that you-
explained in the story.
Right. They're puzzle pieces that you need to put together, and some of it is explained in the story, just not the full picture.
That's a problem.
I feel like this is the theme of most of the games that we've been doing spoiler casts on. They're
Yeah.
really like convoluted and weird, but a lot of like the explanations are in text.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, is like that's what makes for a good game to do a spoiler cast on, but certain individuals on the show don't seek those things out and listen to them.
No, I actually listened to most of them. I listened to like 65 of them or something like that. I don't know, but like still, it's just a matter of something. It's just objectively bad writing to not have something that fundamental to a plot in the plot.
Well, anyway, to continue on. So, Rosalind developed the Lutece particle, which is the atom that doesn't fall.
Right.
It just and that's the technology that helped to develop Columbia in Comstock's reality. She also developed a machine that lets her open tears to other dimensions, and that's how she came in contact with her other self, or her brother, Robert, who exists in Booker's reality. And that's also how Comstock got in cahoots with him. This device, this is another thing that wasn't really that clear. I mean, it's funny because when I think back on it, it kind of is clear. I just didn't really put it together until I read about it. The experimenting with the device to look into other tears and go into other dimensions made Comstock sterile.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So he couldn't have children.
Yeah.
Which explains why he wanted Elizabeth, because what he did was had Rosalind and Robert find someone of his kin, DNA, a rightful heir, someone that's related to him but in a different dimension. So that would be this Anna DeWitt, who is the child of Booker, who is the same person as Comstock in another dimension.
Yes.
Are we following, Jason?
No, I follow it completely.
Okay.
It's just I had interpreted those final scenes completely differently.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Because
so,
I didn't do like mega research. I was just playing the
gotcha,
game.
yeah. I know it was so loaded. I'll stop giving a recap and just go back to like the whole bit with the ending.
No. It's fine because now like I'm on the same page.
Right. The only other thing that I guess I want to say is, yeah, when Booker mentions to Elizabeth, like, we have to go back to Comstock's birth, she opens the door and they're back at the baptism, because the birth of Comstock was him accepting the baptism and becoming a born-again man. So he realizes that, and all these Elizabeths from all these other dimensions, which I kind of thought was cheesy and whatever, but they drown him, he dies, they all start disappearing, and voila, that's the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, to like summarize it, and I think they say it at some point in the game, there's always a man, there's always a woman, there's always a lighthouse,
Yes.
there's always a city.
Yes.
And so that's how it connects all of the BioShocks.
Yes.
And how it leaves it open for future ones, which we might be getting, or just ends it forever.
We definitely are getting. We'll talk about that too. But yeah.
Also,
it's so loaded.
Elizabeth is Annabelle, so
yes,
which
Anna,
doesn't really mean anything until you're in after the arcade sequence, Soldier's Field, where you're headed to the the Hall of Heroes. There's a woman that stops Elizabeth. She's like, "Oh, Annabelle," and then she's like, "I'm not Annabelle. I'm Elizabeth." And she was like, "Oh, okay, well, have a good day then." And then Elizabeth was like, "That's weird." And then at one point, when you're in one of Booker's memories, when he's in the room drunk, that sequence that you keep going back to, that's kind of like black and white. He says, like, he cries out like, "Annabelle." And so you're not really sure, like, who the hell is Annabelle until the very end when they reveal.
I think her actual name is just Anna, though. But that bit is like a good little. That is a good little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Like recognizing her from under a somewhat correct but incorrect name overall, and it being just a weird thing. Like that actually is like kind of clever on the writing front.
There was also the foreshadowing with the carving of AD in Booker's hand, saying that he's the false prophet, and then you find out like somewhere in the game that the false prophet is Comstock, and so it was a lot of foreshadowing that I really didn't catch until I played it 7 years later, and even more so till I played a second playthrough.
Yeah.
There's other symbology that I think was well done, as we'll probably talk about when we talk about Elizabeth more.
The telegram. I liked the bit with the telegram from the little boy that said, "Don't pick number 77," and that like things like that, and then they make sense to you moments later. It was just really, really. It was cool to see. It was really cool to see. You're walking through Columbia while it's still peaceful before you're attacked, and you see this claw with AD on the hand, and Booker holds up his hand so you can see it and sees the AD, and he's like, "That's weird."
Yeah.
I liked little touches like that.
Ultimately, though, now that I'm thinking of it, it's funny. I had this completely different view of what the ending actually meant from you guys, but I find it funny that as like a twist, it really didn't mean anything, because the ultimate outcome of what happens in the end, where ultimately, spoiler alert, Elizabeth drowns you, she kills you. And basically Booker / Comstock is ended.
Well, it's interesting.
Regardless of whether you're Booker and you're her father, or you're Comstock and her father, or both, it has the same exact end result.
It's interesting because I guess one of the last things I want to talk about is the post-credits scene. Did you see that, Jason?
No,
Oh my God.
I didn't realize there was one.
Okay. So there's a post-credit scene with Booker waking up in in his investigation room or whatever, and gets up and opens the door to, I guess, the nursery, if we want to call it, and he says Anna, and then it cuts to black, which
Yeah.
kind of leaves things ambiguous, but what it seems to suggest is that there is a Booker in a reality where he still has his daughter
Right.
and doesn't, I guess, doesn't give her away, or is able to get her back, or something along those
I mean,
lines.
this game is called BioShock Infinite for a
Right.
reason.
There's
You
an
can there's infinite Bookers and
There's
Elizabeth.
infinite possibilities. There's always a man. There's always a woman. There's
Yeah.
always a lighthouse. There's always a city. Oh, another thing too, I guess, real quickly cover in case no one really picked up on this. Although I think this is one of the more obvious plot points that they explained. Elizabeth's pinky gets severed in the tear when Booker changes his mind about selling her and goes to stop them. Comstock gets hold of the girl. The tear closes, and her pinky is still through the hole, so it
Yeah.
severs the pinky. And this was like a thing that I had to try to work out myself, because I was like, well, that's what allows her to open tears, is the fact that she exists in two different realities, so somehow that gives her that ability, which is fine. I can take that for granted. But I kept having it in my head, like, well, wait, why does Comstock, why did he want her?
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, the whole thing is because she's an heir.
Right. So, but that's the thing I wasn't clear on, and I'm hoping you can clarify if we don't talk about it. So, if the Pinky gave her the power, and he wanted the power, or the lettuce twins, I'm going to call them because I can't say it. If they wanted like to experiment on the power, like why not cut their own fucking finger off to have tear powers?
They didn't want to experiment on the power. They didn't know that would happen. That's not why they wanted her. Comstock simply wanted a rightful heir to rule Columbia when he dies.
Okay.
And that we see that come to fruition in that reality, or in a reality, during the bit where you're trying to rescue Elizabeth in, oh man, what is the name? Oh, in Comstock House.
Mm-hmm.
You run into, or as you're trying to find and rescue Elizabeth, you get taken forward in time.
Yeah, she takes you
by old Elizabeth, who exists in a reality.
It's the best part of the game.
Tons of realities. She exists in a reality where Comstock succeeds. He has Elizabeth. Booker does not save her. He passes away, and she takes over Columbia. And in like 86. And we saw this in a vision earlier in the game. I totally forgot about this until I replayed the game, Delaila. But we see this in a vision of Columbia bombarding and bombing New York City.
Yeah.
In like 1986. That was actually led by Elizabeth in a reality where Comstock succeeds in making her, basically brainwashing her into his way of thinking, and destroying the world below. And the whole thing is she brings you forward in time because she realizes after it's already too late, like, wow, this is fucked up. I don't want to do this. Hey, Booker, here's what you need to stop this from happening. Go save me.
Well, I think more importantly in that scene, and this, I guess we're getting now a little more into Elizabeth, who I would say is the best character out of all of them. I think her story should have been front and center. It's kind of why I think there shouldn't have been such a involved player, character, protagonist, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think they both work well together. I don't think that Elizabeth got the shaft in favor of Booker. I think the story very much focused on the two of them.
Well, I guess what I mean by that is I wish the player character had been more like the one from the original, where it's not clear that they're so involved with what's going on until more towards the end. You understand what I'm saying?
I would even say that's the case, though. in this game. I don't.
Well, it's fairly clear from the beginning that Booker is intrinsically tied. I mean, in the lighthouse, there are notes addressing him directly. You see the signs, like you mentioned, the AD engraved on his hand.
Oh.
Like you know he's part of this. Um, but with Elizabeth, I think that was the best part of the story was watching her grow from the naive young girl locked in the tower, the tropic princess in the tower, to that old woman you see in that scene, and that's why I think it's the best part of the game. Not just because you see kind of the arc of that growth, but also that note she gives you, the cage, which is symbolic in two ways. From an immediate perspective, you know, the Elizabeth in the actual time period you're playing in deduces that cage, the word, it's the letters that are meant to be notes, musical notes that can command that giant golden bird that follows you around.
Songbird.
The songbird, yeah. But the idea of a cage itself is more meant to be thematic, reflective of the idea of fate. That kind of the only way to resolve what she doesn't want to happen, which is that bombardment of New York, is ultimately to kill DeWitt.
Sure, I didn't think about it that way. I thought of it way more surface level of she was locked in a tower most of her life.
I did too, but that makes sense.
That's a really good analysis. Wow, Jason, you said something deep and shit that we agree with.
Well, that was why I found Elizabeth's journey and the changes in her reactions to situations and how her reactions change from like that first time you get into a gunfight in like the train station after you've rescued her, she runs away immediately.
Yeah.
And then as the game goes on, she just becomes almost ignorant to the violence.
Yeah.
If not wanting to be more involved in it. It's just a very interesting character arc. And that's why I honestly felt the game should have focused more on that and all of this like rift tearing and the science behind it. That stuff and the philosophy behind it, I felt was way more interesting than anything else the game did.
Well, I still think they managed to tie everything together in a meaningful way. I feel even Booker's whole involvement still tied in well with everything, to the point of them knowing that he's coming. Warning the entire city. And
I more meant like the the Columbia that you enter versus the Columbia that you leave.
Yeah,
like that stuff doesn't really.
Go ahead.
That stuff really doesn't mean anything to the core story of the game. You could argue it's like alternate realities, but like it's really it's really just there. It is technically speaking, yeah, but it's really just there for it to be like in BioShock fashion, making some kind of political commentary.
I think I'm going to disagree with that actually, though, because the Columbia you end in is far different from the Columbia that you start in. Because
it's also the same in many ways, which is what they were trying to get at.
It is, because it's along the same timeline, and remember we're in the reality of Comstock. I mean, Columbia doesn't exist in Booker's reality; it exists in Comstock's reality. So we're in Comstock's reality, and we actually go through a few different sub realities through that part where we're trying to get the Chen Lin, the gunsmith, to help aid the Vox Populi in their revolution, and going through the first tear where it changes the reality. That was one where he was alive but didn't have his tools, and then you go through another one where he has his tools, he already armed them, and he's dead. But the big difference there is that Booker showed up in the city and they were already armed, or they were armed, and he helped them and became a martyr for the Vox Populi. Basically, I would say we ended in a reality where the Vox Populi were a lot more violent, a lot more motivated, and a lot more antagonistic.
Well, I think the idea the game was trying to get across was that just because something has noble aims doesn't mean it can't get just as violent as the bad things that
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
trying to. It's the idea of the terror, the horrifying reign of the czars in Russia was just as bad as the communists who overthrew them. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I was it's funny. I was rewatching Rogue One a week or two ago, and it's something. This is something that I knew and realized before, but I just like said it out loud to my roommate and was just like, the rebels aren't that good either.
Well, in that movie,
In
yeah.
that movie, it really like. I mean, it's not even in that movie. It's just their actions. A lot of their actions aren't. They're for a noble cause, but they're still not noble themselves. And that's true of this righteous movement, the Vox Populi, versus the founders and the leaders of Colombia. Like, they're pretty. They're not shitty people.
That was one of the other most interesting scenes in the game. As much as I, was just saying how I felt like a lot of the politics in it were kind of an add-on. There was that interesting moment where the leader of the Vox Populi in that alternate reality where they've overtaken Colombia, you catch up with her,
We're talking
and
about Daisy Fitzroy.
Yeah.
yes, she's an African American woman. Um, and when you catch up with her, I guess in this reality, she had seen you die at some point. She doesn't believe you're actually there.
Well,
She
that's
believes
because
you're an
he.
imposter.
This is the reality where Booker was a martyr
Right.
and helped
Exactly.
and helped the Vox Populi. So for him to suddenly be alive when Daisy saw him die, like she was calling some bullshit there.
So
But
that's one thing I wanted to say. Like,
oh
I
yeah,
think, I mean, I like how this game really didn't push a political agenda. Like, there were clearly politics in it, but it didn't like pick a side, so to speak.
yes.
But the only part that, and I like that, but the only part that bothered me about it is they were making Daisy seem like she was like Comstock because she was so violent. She even
Well,
tried to kill a kid,
well,
which
that's
is
exactly
essentially.
that's exactly what I was about to say. That was one of the
Mhm.
most interesting scenes in the game because it was showing how you can have noble aims to begin with, but if you let that hatred overcome you, I mean, she's trying to kill the kid because, as she says in the game, we can't just, get rid of the rulers. We have to take out the roots as well. She's basically saying
Which is
we can't just kill the ruling white people. We have to kill the children of the white people as well to prevent white people from coming back, which is just as bad as white racism against black people.
and also is and also to note, this is pretty good foreshadowing of what's to come with Booker and
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Comstock's realization. Um, yeah, I put this in there as one of the themes of this game. It does touch a little bit on racism.
A lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it.
And
Well,
and
I
let me
would
just
I wouldn't
note.
say a lot of it. It does it pretty subtly
Let me
like for the most part.
Can I just make a quick note
Sure.
before we delve into like different races and how they interact there? I was curious throughout the entire game because in the original BioShock, it was meant to be it was very much inspired by the works of Ayn Rand and like the Fountainhead and all that.
Yes.
Obviously, a lot of that philosophy was drawn on from objectivism. And the denizens of Rapture that we got from all of the material and the things we saw were very much the kind of people, wealthy people, who would go and participate in a society like that.
Hmm.
And throughout this game, we see black people, we see gay people, all sorts of different people who, in the year 1912, and especially in a very religious place like, um, oh shit, what's the city called in this one? Like,
Columbia.
Columbia. Sorry, I just had a brain fart. Obviously, in a very religious place like Columbia, would not be welcome. Why the fuck are there black and gay people going up to Columbia? I
Well,
don't get it.
this was also not at a time where slavery was a thing because it's like the very early 20th century.
It's
But
1912, right?
yes, 1912. So this is I think this is a well it also I mean to be completely honest we're in a game where there's an infinite number of realities. Maybe this was a reality where slavery still existed. Um
Maybe.
But the
I mean, I thought that was very obvious.
yeah,
There was slavery. There was a scene where that showed
Like
that
that,
slavery, in Colombia.
well,
yeah.
okay,
And the
no.
handyman was like
Let's actually not call it slavery because they're not. I wouldn't say they're slaves, but
indentured servitude.
there's definitely
Yeah.
segregation. Let's call it. I wouldn't say slavery, but definitely segregation.
As race as well as class, yeah.
Yes, like no one is completely in servitude to anyone else. I would even argue that Daisy was not a slave of Comstock and Lady Comstock. She was employed as the handmaiden, and she was also treated very well. She looked up to Lady Comstock, and Lady Comstock admired her as well. So I don't think slavery is at play here. If I insinuated that, I take it back. It is very clearly segregation. Obviously, in American history, segregation was a
Yeah.
thing.
There are
during that time.
there are even in Colombia, the guys operating the elevators are black, which is a direct nod. That was a common job for black men in the early 20th century in hotels.
And it's very, very clear when there's times where you walk into bathrooms and they're very clearly labeled colors, whites, colors,
Right.
whites.
Right.
And also to bring the race theme back to like earlier in the game, there's the bit where you do the baseball lottery and you win and you get to throw the baseball. And you can either throw it at an interracial couple. Well, you don't get to throw it at all, but you can choose to either throw it at an interracial couple or at the announcer, who was, by the way, Jeremiah Fink. I didn't realize that was Fink until my second playthrough. But you get stopped before you can throw the ball. I chose both times to throw it at Fink. Fuck that guy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And by the way, when Mark says before, like about indentured servitude, Jeremiah Fink is like this hyper capitalist, and you hear a whole monologue as you're going down an elevator where he's talking about how humans should strive to be like bees, busy bees.
Yes.
All they do is work. I thought that was an interesting little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make a quick note about that specific scene. Like, this is where you see the setting of Colombia. Colombia is like bright, it's beautiful, it's a carnival, people are having fun, everything's great. And then all of a sudden you get to this auction kind of stage, and that's when they give you they bring out the interracial couple that have like these like wooden things around their neck, and they give you the option to like throw the ball at them or not, and then that's when you start like fighting the police. And
It's a good
it's
a good juxtaposition. Yeah,
They
Exactly.
see your hand before you can even throw it and realize you're the false shepherd. And that's when, I feel like if any more plot points come up about the ending or the plot as a whole, we can talk about them.
Honestly, from between the character arcs and the beginning and the end, there really isn't that much other than you go through, rescue Elizabeth, try to get her out of there, and you go to two different realities. One where Colombia is a bunch of white, rich, peaceful people ruling over a bunch of unhappy white and black and all sorts of people living down below. And then the people down below in the alternate reality rise up and, it's basically like the Russian Revolution, or more accurately like the French Revolution.
And another thing on racism that I thought it was so disgusting, and it was so early in the game. There's a voxophone you can find where like Comstock is just blatant, like flat out saying like, yeah, colored people are lesser than white people. That's just how it is. And I'm like, wow. And
which is why when Elizabeth was in the elevator and she was like, oh, like Daisy Fitzroy is just as bad as Comstock, I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's like different. Like, yeah, sure, they're both violent, but one is violent because she's dealing with this kind of like oppression.
But do the ends justify the means? That's the point it's trying to bring up.
And to really double down on why Daisy Fitzroy formed the Vox Populi and what they're fighting back against, why they're fighting back against it. Comstock didn't want the secret to get out about the the test machine and the other dimensions and
Mm-hmm.
everything about the fact that Elizabeth was actually a stolen child, even though she's related to him, she doesn't belong to him. And Lady Comstock couldn't keep the secret anymore because the entire city believed that they had a child together,
Yeah.
and she was about to go public with it. So he plotted to have the Lutesses murdered and his wife murdered. The Lutesses were actually plotted in corroboration with Fink, who all he did was fiddle with the machine, the Lutece machine, when they went to use it, and what that actually wound up doing was making it so they existed across all of time and space, which is why they pop up in the most randomest places. They're able to just pop out and pop in and go whenever, wherever, whenever, at will, is because they just sort of exist in time and space because of Fink's intervention. He thinks that he killed them. He didn't. And Comstock succeeded in murdering Lady Comstock. He blamed it on Daisy Fitzroy. You see that when you go to the not the memorial,
Oh, I didn't even know that.
the Hall of Heroes. You see it when you go to the Hall of Heroes, and you see the memorial for Lady Comstock, that Daisy Fitzroy was framed. They believe the city believes that she's the one that committed the murder, but she was actually framed by Comstock as the murderer, and that's why she forms the Vox Populi. It's not just the oppression. It's there's a reason she has such a vendetta against Comstock and Fink, and that's why.
And at the end of the day, and I will give the writing team a lot of credit for this. At the end of the day, like, as you're going through the levels, you see in both worlds a lot of violent people, or a lot of innocent people being brutally murdered on both sides. So it is very much in a Star Trek way, like kind of leaving you to make your own decision about the situation, which I think is way better than being preached to.
Yeah.
It's very gray.
Yeah.
We'll keep jumping in and out of story beats. I'm sure there's still more stuff that could be brought up and we haven't talked about. I think we've mostly covered everything that's covered in the ending, or attempted to be covered in the ending. I want to talk about other things. Let's go back to that raffle where they realize you're the false shepherd, and you grab a sky hook and you just fucking jam it into a guy's chin and brutally murder. This game, I didn't realize, like, there was a controversy when this game came out with a lot of journalists and reviewers and people calling it, like, pretty excessively and unnecessarily violent. And I kind of just, like, shrugged that off and was like, I mean, whatever. Just,
I felt like it was very satisfying in, like, a Doom sort of fashion.
Oh my God. It was so gruesome at times.
I love certain upgrades that allow you, when you melee someone, you hurl their body like 20 yards, and it just it just electrifies everybody around them, and then you start shooting and people blow up and swarms of bats just rip apart. It gets really crazy, especially towards the end as you've upgraded everything.
Yeah, and
I feel like for that particular scene it was fine, the violence, but I didn't find myself using that melee ability where you just brutally kill them, like, very slowly, like you would in Doom. And I felt like that wasn't really necessary. I mean, it doesn't do it as well as Doom, so it didn't feel as satisfying. I prefer to, like you said, throw people off a gondola.
I'm not saying the mechanics are executed as in the same smooth, precise way that Doom is. I did find them satisfying in that sense.
I guess I guess to just try to justify this from a lore perspective, from a story perspective, Booker is made out to be this ex-Pinkerton agent that also was at the Battle of Wounded Knee, and he was even, like, Slate, either in a Vox phone or in dialogue, like, flat out refers to him as the White Injun, because he has, like, Native American descent in his blood, yet he brutally murdered a ton of Native Americans in some really, really gross, gruesome ways. They really try to paint Booker as kind of this monster, for lack of better words. And I guess that is kind of why they maybe like upped the ante on the violence in this game, like jamming skyhooks into people's necks and decapitating them, and like jamming it into their stomach and spinning it, and
It's also just more
disaboweling
fun.
them. I mean, I don't know. All you do is press a button, Jason. I don't
No.
necessarily equate
I'm
that
saying
to fun.
I'm saying just from an aesthetic perspective.
I
Honestly,
guess.
I use that only a lot in the beginning. Like
Same.
as the game went on, and there were very few like abilities that I found useful, but the crows, man. The crows. I just
Yo.
love
Crows,
fucking
yeah.
everybody up with the crows.
Word up.
It was like watching the Alfred Hitchcock movie The Birds.
Yeah.
Joe's freaks me out, especially as a New Yorker, because if the birds turned on us here, there's so fucking many of them.
What, you ever
Then you
watch?
combine it with the shock jockey or like the
Yes.
fire ability, the devil's kiss, and then you have like
Yes.
electric crows
Yeah.
or fire crows. I love that.
You're just like paralyzed, shocked, and getting picked apart by birds. You ever watch Birdemic, Jason?
No.
Don't. Don't watch that movie. It's terrible. Don't watch that movie.
But everybody should watch The Birds.
Birds,
Yeah.
yeah. Delilah, what was your favorite vigor? I'm guessing Jason's was Murder of Crows. So.
It was Murder of Crows on normal mode. Now I find myself using the one where you absorb all of the bullets. What was it called?
Oh, Return to Sender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That vigor came way too late in the game, and I kind of just never cared to use it.
See, that's the thing, is that the vigors were placed kind of randomly almost. And I would have appreciated if there were like bosses that you needed to use specific ones in their mechanics.
I mean, that's kind of a thing, is there weren't really that many bosses to begin with.
Yeah.
It was just Lady Comstock's ghost.
Yeah,
much.
no,
and fuck her
actually,
because
yeah.
she's impervious to the birds.
I hate her.
and you have to fight her 3 times.
Yes.
Yes. God.
Yeah,
I'm doing a full playthrough of it on YouTube, and oh my God, I spent like 3 hours fighting her stupid ass ghost on 1999 mode.
Did you beat her on 1999 mode?
I beat her in the bank. I think I have to fight her one more time.
Okay, yeah, she was easily the hardest part of that game for me on 1999 mode.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, fun fact, I was wondering why the hell it was called 1999 mode. It's because 1999 was the release year for System Shock 2.
Oh, cool.
Mm.
I read that while I was doing my research and found that
Look
to be really
at the big brain on Mark.
I would say my favorite vigor was, I don't know, man. I really liked Possession. Possession was like super useful, and I used it so much.
Yeah, I did use it too. It just used too much salt.
Yeah, it did use up a lot of salts. A lot of salts.
Shock Jockey, I felt like was the most hyped up in the game, though. Like you had to go through the whole Hall of Heroes to get to it.
It was like the one that
get the Shock Jockey.
It was like the only one I think that you needed for plot progression.
Right.
I don't think you needed any other vigor for plot.
A quick question because in order to get Shock Jockey, you have to defeat the Colonel. What was his name?
Slate.
Well,
you don't have to. You don't have to defeat Slate.
Well,
you have to defeat his
to...
waves of lackeys.
Right. Well, yeah.
Which goes back to there's no fucking boss fights in this game besides the Siren.
But you're given a choice to kill him then. You also actually can kill him later. Did you guys kill him then?
I did both.
Yeah.
You don't even kill him later. He just becomes brain dead later on his own.
Well, I shot him.
Oh.
Just to see what happened.
Okay.
Because I actually felt bad that I didn't shoot him earlier. And Elizabeth says if you shoot him, I suppose that's what he would want it, or I suppose that's a better fate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Like when he's just sitting, like you said, brain dead in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What? Yeah. I mean, I guess as far as just to go back to vigors. This game, and I can't, Delilah, we can't really talk about this yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the game doesn't really, in our BioShock episode, or for the original BioShock, I mean, one of the notes that I bring up is that the game really does its homework on a lot of things. If there's a question, if there's a question you have, the game has an answer for it. Whether it's in an audio log or it's on like some random board in some room somewhere, or it gets told to you explicitly in the story, it like really has an answer to almost all your questions. This game doesn't in a lot of respects. Like vigors are kind of just a thing they're giving out on the streets. They give you these powers, and
You can miss them. Yeah.
and well, it's just the fact that you're really just giving random citizens in this normal ass looking city. I mean, granted, the city's in the sky, but it's an ostensibly normal city. And they're just giving out these bottles of like, here, take this, drink it. It'll change your life. It'll change your DNA. It'll let you possess your friends. Make them do what you want. Whatever. It's no big deal. Have it for free. It's like, what the fuck? That doesn't make sense.
Right. The idea of improving your body through like these genetic superpowers actually tied into like I was saying before, the philosophy of objectivism and Ayn Rand and her outlook on perfecting the individual. Yeah.
And as a whole, Rapture was built around Rapture was built again. I hate to keep comparing shit. Rapture was built around the idea of bringing in these
scientists,
high class citizens, let's call them. Yes,
Yeah.
Scientists. We've got scientists, we've got musicians, artists, people of a really high class, really high stature, bringing them into this city where the free market rules all. And it made sense for things to progress the way that they did in that city, including the development of plasmids. And they had a scientific explanation for it.
Yes.
I don't want to give away too much. The game proper for this game doesn't really have an answer for Vigors. The DLC does, which I think Jason would agree with his stance on like if a main game doesn't really explain something explicitly, it's bad writing. And while I don't completely agree with that, I will 100% agree that when a game doesn't explicitly say something, but a DLC episode does, or gives you more background onto that, I think that is kind of crappy.
You could at the very least say it's lazy.
I wouldn't call it lazy. I think it's just holding back revelations and story details for something that a lot of your player base is not going to touch.
And let me make a quick note, just because I mentioned this earlier when you were talking about the game's history. This game was really fucked for a while in development hell. And in many ways, people who worked on the project said it was a miracle that it came out as good as it did. It did get praised when it came out.
Yes, it was on a lot of people's lists for Game of the Year, actually.
So I think a lot of the deficiencies in this manner, and as you noted, the team was drastically cut down at Irrational Games
After the game came out.
Oh, it was after. I'm sorry.
It was after the game came out, and after was like critically acclaimed. That that they got shrunk.
But I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would venture a guess that the hell that this game was caught in development may be responsible for a lot of the looser ends that were much tighter in the original.
Maybe. I feel like we don't really have a definitive reason as to...
No, of course not.
From a writing perspective as to why a lot of the stuff wasn't really included in the main game. But that's something... We won't get into it now. Obviously, we'll talk about it later, probably at the very bottom of the show. But yeah, figures are kind of explained. It's not in the main game. I don't like that. It kind of sucks.
Yeah. A lot of great things are explained in the DLC, and we'll get to that at some point.
Yeah, so we can, I guess, move on just from that note. And
Cliffhangers!
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about more broad gameplay elements. The first thing I noticed and didn't like was the lack of a weapon wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're kind of...
Especially if you're trophy hunting and you want to get...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird coming from you,
Which
Jason.
they did fix in the DLC too.
Well, when I noticed that you do get like points each time you kill with certain weapons, I thought it actually might help you in some gameplay manner as well. I thought like they would give you some sort of upgrade. And honestly, yeah, I wanted to kind of switch around because the combat, while you can definitely tell it was a last gen game, it's not as precise as a lot of the FPSs you have now. Even some of the looser ones like Doom that are more what's the word I'm looking for? They're more
Twitch
run and
based.
gun. Yeah, the Twitch based run and gun as opposed to something like Call of Duty. Um,
Yeah.
but overall, I did feel good response, especially when using heavy things like the hand cannon or the shotgun, which
Yeah,
I became addicted to towards the end. And when you throw in something like a swarm of birds fucking everybody up while you're just ripping on them with a shotgun and everybody explodes because of some passive ability you have when you kill them, it is satisfying. I'll give it that.
yeah, I would say the gunplay is actually pretty satisfying. I just don't like the lack of like weapon permanence, I guess. That even goes down to the upgrade system where you instead of finding these upgrade stations and you get this like upgrade that even is reflected in your gun, like literally you see the upgrade change on your weapon. In the again in the original BioShock. This time you're just buying upgrades at a vending machine, and it's not physically represented on the weapon itself. It's just like, yeah, you upgraded this. You can see it in your menu that this is upgraded. And who knows? You could upgrade a gun and
Never use it again.
never use it again, or you don't not come across it for a while.
I think when they were designing it, because and I noticed this as I kept running out of ammo over and over and over again because the ammo for the gun I had just wasn't dropping, but it was dropping for everything else. I think their intent was to have you switching between guns constantly.
Yeah, well, that was
Yeah.
definitely their intent. That's even
Yeah.
indicative in some of the gear that you get. Like, there's gear that when you switch out a weapon, it creates a ghost that
Yes.
can shoot other enemies and stuff. Like, it's very clear that they obviously want you switching out guns pretty often, but. So I didn't like using all the guns, especially in the latter half when Vox guns get introduced, and I thought all the Vox guns sucked. Like,
Yes, those repeaters. Oh my
the
god.
repeaters were terrible. I hated the burst gun. I thought the Hailfire was an absolute garbage version of the volley gun. I would much rather have the volley gun.
Yeah.
The heater is just a worse shotgun. It's terrible.
Yeah, it has like less spread, but it does burn, I guess.
Yeah, but it only has one shot. You have to reload. I hated
Yeah.
all the Vox guns. I did not like any of them. And in the latter portion of the game, your maps, your floors, your enemies are just riddled with them, and that you're forced to use that crap. And I just did not like it.
Tell you what, I did
Yeah.
love that crank gun, man.
The crank gun was cool as shit. Yeah.
That fucking shit was awesome.
The Patriots. We could talk. We could talk a bit about the enemies. Let's start with the Patriots because the Patriots were dope. Just these big statues of
Yeah.
former U.S. presidents with
Yeah,
this fucking
they were pretty
crank
fun
gun.
to fight.
I never even really got their weak points very well because there's very few times where where their attention is not directed at you.
Only that
Yeah.
final fight where their attention is they're just
Yeah.
running straight at the big generator to shoot it.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the fucking Patriots are so cool. The crank gun was a lot of fun to use. I did enjoy the crank gun. Other than that and the handymen, I guess, handymen were annoying to deal with.
So annoying.
Because I felt like it was so difficult to put space in between them and you.
The
Only
crows.
way is the crows.
Yeah, the
I was just
crows.
gonna
The
say
crows.
that.
Yeah, they hated the
I
crows.
I just always use the crows, man. It's like
Yeah.
all I
Yeah.
used.
But other than that, this is one of those big differences between this game and the original game. Your thread is a lot more human. Like, the original had splicers, which were humans, but they were super genetically modified and had
Yeah.
some of them had powers and they were just crazy. These are just there's the cops of the city, other I guess patriots you can call them of the not the robot patriots, just like patriots of Colombia, people that are defending their city just start attacking you. And
Both the original and this one had retro sci-fi aesthetics, but the difference is that the original also had, like you just said, that horror bit added to the aesthetic as well.
yes, this was
where you
much
were-
more steampunk in
Yeah.
in thematics, in aesthetics, I
And
should say.
For that reason, like because we had more human enemies, I found myself using guns a lot more than I was gonna say plasmids and the vigors.
Mhm.
Because in the original BioShock, you had to use the vigors against certain enemies. In this one, like only against the big enemies, like the handyman and the George Washington.
And even
Patriot.
then,
Yeah, the Patriots.
even then, if you have cover sufficiently and you're timed well enough, you can get away without using them.
Yeah, especially on normal mode.
I think it's kind of a shame that we went with a generic, you have a shield and then you have a health bar kind of system, and the shield regenerates. The like,
Why?
I don't know. I just
I think that's a product of its time.
yeah, it's a let's go with that. It's a product of its time. That was like regenerating health just was so played out in that generation, and for this game to drop its whole medkit system and Eve hypos in favor of, I mean, you still
Just
have
pressing square as you run around a road and just eating food.
well, I mean, that's that was even present in the first game, but having
yeah,
this
to be
having
fair,
this shield that regenerates and having to constantly take cover instead of like the ability to just run and gun and your health starts going down and like, oh, medkit real quick, okay, let's keep going. Like there was a lot less this
choice.
game. It's funny because this game tried to be much more run and gun and yet took things away that would make it more run and gun. You know? Having this regenerating shield kind of took a lot away in that regard. But it is what it is. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Well, let's talk about Elizabeth as a gameplay mechanic.
Yes. Yes.
'Cause
You mean as a gameplay crutch?
and crutch, yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's
She came in clutch so many times.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, on 1999 mode, she throws. So Elizabeth, for the audience, basically throws you health, money, ammo, and she can open up the tears, which can summon like turrets or patriots to fight by your side, or guns.
The tears were really no, I wouldn't say those were the most useful ability she had. The most useful ability she had was I'm out of salts.
Ammo.
Here you go.
Assaults, yeah.
Have some salts. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Which happened a lot more often on normal mode. 1999 modes, I'm like, bitch, isn't it time to like give me some fucking
my
salt?
God, yeah.
Every once in a while, and it's seemingly randomly, she'd just be like, "I got nothing." I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah.
I was totally going into this depending on you to have something for me.
Like I said, Delaila, like on 1999 mode, during the last time you fight the siren, I was crouched behind this thing with no ammo and no Eve and like the tiniest sliver of health. Just like, Elizabeth, you gotta give me something.
Yeah.
And like eventually, I don't know how, but I killed her without dying in that fight.
Yeah,
which
'cause
is
you're-
more than I could say about the bank, which I died like at least 20
God.
times in.
When a crowd of powerful enemies like that are around you, like melee is not going to cut it in this game.
No, it's not.
No.
And you know, it's kind of brutal, yeah, just like bopping people with that fucking skyhook.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing we didn't really talk about is the sky rail.
Yeah, the sky rail. Let's I guess dig into that a bit.
I hated it. Oh.
Really? I fucking loved it. I felt like that's what made it so unique.
It's
like
so-
in 2020.
But
it is a bit like what's the word? Because it's unique. Like the first few times, it's like, oh, this is cool. I can slow down a bit if I take aim. Which, by the way, taking aim, it felt so weird having to press the thumbstick, which is again like a thing of its time.
Well, when you're on, it's funny because when you're on sky rails, you can't use vigors, and you can use the left trigger to aim down sights.
Right.
But only when you're on sky rails, though.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought it was cool. Like you could shoot enemies mid-rail. They would be on the rail, and you could shoot them while they're on the rail, and they fall off. But after a while, I was like, this is really just a way for me to expose myself when I'm trying to get out of a situation that I don't want to be in.
Hmm. I felt like it helped me avoid a lot of damage by being on the sky rail.
Yeah, you just kind of jump off, and you can use the stick to speed yourself up so you can get out of a situation quicker.
I suppose in some of the arenas, the sky rails were designed better than in others, maybe.
Well, my biggest observation as someone that didn't play this game until 2020 and thinking I knew a lot about it when it came out, I always felt the sky rails would make the game more wide, explorable, open, and
Right.
it's really not. It's really very linear. In spite of that, it's a wide open space with tunnel vision,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and that kind of duped me a bit. It's almost like playing a first person Uncharted game in a lot of ways, where like a lot of these things are just somewhat even like set pieces that you just follow along with.
Yeah. There were only like 2 areas that you can sky rail back and forth in between. I think it was like the Hall of Heroes and Soldiers Field that you can go back and forth, and that was
Yeah,
it. Other than that, like once you hit a checkpoint, no turning back.
And there are some wide, like Soldiers Field is one of those areas where it's like really wide, and there is quite a bit to explore, and the sky rail helps with that, but it's overall not that big. It's not that, which I'm not. That's not a criticism. It's just an observation of. I thought that this game was going to be a lot bigger than it is. It's actually, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a relief.
So
I didn't know if I wanted to explore this big sky city, but
Yeah.
it's an arena
agree.
shooter, yeah.
yeah, it's still inherently an arena shooter with some wide arenas, with lots of options.
Sometimes I felt they were almost for the style of gameplay they were going for. I felt they were almost too wide, and that I had no idea where I was getting shot from.
Yeah.
Especially when you start
Yeah.
introducing like the turrets that are floating on the balloons and
Yeah.
stuff
Yep.
like that. And
Mosquitoes.
yeah,
Well, you know what's in these wide open spaces? There's plenty of collectibles to find. Let's talk about some of them collectibles. I thought voxophones were pretty cool.
Yeah.
As like a concept, it's like a portable record player that you record your thoughts on. That's actually kind of cool and clever, and pretty fitting for that time period, I feel.
yeah.
Yeah, the kinetoscopes and the telescopes were kind of useless.
Yeah,
Like
the
I was
kinetoscopes-
admiring the sky without them.
Some kinetoscopes were actually, I mean, they were cool because they had this silent film aesthetic that they'd play this silent film. A lot of them kind of really didn't tell you much,
Exactly.
but I don't know. There were a lot of them. Some of them were cool. Some of them weren't. Probably could have done with less of them. The telescopes were kind of just like, look into the sky. You could see this just as well if you weren't looking through this telescope.
Probably not as probably better without the telescope.
Yeah, and I guess the gear system was like a really clear replacement for tonics. I was pretty lukewarm on it, but it's there, and you can get gear that do things.
There's I guess because we had the collection, the BioShock collection, or at least I did. There's a bunch of like gear that it gives you as a result in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I changed very few of it. Like, because one of them is like it increases your magazine size by like 75%, which is more than any other piece of gear in the game.
Yeah, it's because that was a lot of that was a pre-order bonus for the original, but the collection just has all the DLC in there. So cool, I have the pre-order bonus for buying this game 4 years later.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? I think I think 3 years. I think the collection came out in 2016. But like, yeah, it's just like, thanks.
I think the only replacement I did was the one that when like an enemy dies, they shock everybody around them.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty fucking awesome combination with the crows.
I mean, it's funny. I didn't change the gear much on the first playthrough, but when I played through 1999 mode, I read some recommended gear to use, and after using that, I wish I had experimented more with the gear, because there was some pretty devastating combinations you could make with some of the gear items in there.
Ooh, you gotta
That-
teach me.
I'll send you what I know. There's a couple gear items in there that like I totally over. Like there's one that for your shield, or with regards to your shield, it you have a delay. You have a longer delay on when your shield recharges.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it recharges twice as fast. And I
used
never
that.
used that until 1999 mode. And in 1999 mode, I was like, wow, this is way better than anything I was using before.
Yeah.
There was one interesting one that when your salts ran out, you started using blood or
Yeah,
health as salts, which came in handy. I was just blasting people with birds so much that I didn't even notice when I ran out of salts. But the problem was I wasn't paying attention to my health much either.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
almost killed myself half the time doing that.
You used birds so much that they became blood birds.
It's the murder of crows, man.
Blood birds, the new game from Software. Yeah, the gear system was okay. Like it was fine. The other thing I guess that you collected was like silver eagles as a currency.
Yeah.
Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Which, like, yeah, you constantly find yourself unable to buy anything in the beginning, and by the end of the game, you're like almost a millionaire, and you can buy everything.
I felt like there was also I didn't realize this in my first playthrough for whatever reason. I'm a fucking idiot because I was getting to the end of the game and I was like, oh my god, they really don't give you a lot of money. You can't purchase everything. I did not realize that you can possess vending machines and they give you money.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I knew that. I'm just surprised you didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even have
Sorry.
to. I didn't even have to do that, like, because I was just hoarding. I wasn't hoarding. I just happened to pick up almost every lock pick. So I had Elizabeth.
Oh, same. There was
open.
like no shortage of lockpicks throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I didn't have enough money to buy every upgrade at the end. And not that I needed them, but I just kind of wanted them for a completionist's sake.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't. Wow, Delaila, you made me feel so much better about myself, and then
I'm
took it
sorry.
right away.
No, I mean, I didn't have enough money, if it makes you feel better, to buy everything and on normal mode. And I knew about the vending machines, and I barely died on that mode. So no matter what, you wouldn't have had enough money to buy everything.
Yeah,
which is
I
a
guess.
point that I wanted to make. Why the fuck don't we have a new game plus mode? I worked so hard to get all those damn vigor upgrades and weapon upgrades. It would have been so much more fun to play 1999 mode with all those abilities.
Right.
I guess they wanted to make you work for it again.
Fuck them.
Fuck you, Ken Levine.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But yeah.
We love you, Ken.
You're
We're
right.
not mad. Yeah. I don't know if I have too much else that I kind of want to talk about.
I like how in the beginning, when you're in the carnival, the game served as a tutorial for the vigors and the weapons. I thought that was a really cool way to implement that.
And you get rewards for not just the immediate rewards of like money for winning the carnival games, but I'm pretty sure it actually gives you.
You can also get cigarettes.
Yes, you can. I smoked a lot of cigarettes.
In real life or in the game?
Both.
Oh.
But yeah, I liked. There were little things here and there. And we were mentioning before we started, it was before we started recording. Like when you see like here and there random like portals open up to alternate universes. You hear some classic tracks. I heard some Creedence, some Madonna.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't like that.
I did.
Because
I'm just showed how much better music got as time went by.
Well, I'm just kind of like that's happening. And it was Creedence, it was Madonna, there was one other one.
I don't remember any other ones.
Girls just wanna have fun.
Well, isn't that Madonna?
Yeah.
I thought is that Madonna? Why did I think it was Cyndi
Wait a minute.
Lauper?
It's Cyndi Lauper.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
Cyndi Lauper. I'm sorry.
So
God, Why did I say that? I like Cyndi Lauper so much better than Madonna. Why did I say that?
There's Cyndi Lauper. There's the Fortunate Son by Creedence. There was another song at some point. I can't even remember what it was. Shit. But like,
Cyndi Lauper, man, The Goonies, good enough.
but my point being is like those all play through tears. Obviously, tears that go into the future and have this other music and whatnot. And there's like one voxophone that kind of mentions it. But y'all had to have paid like a shit ton of money just to license those tracks, and I feel like it was just not worth it. I feel like it was not worth it at all for anything. What purpose did that serve? Like,
Yeah.
fuck, this is like where a shit ton of the budget must have gone. I don't know. That happened. And I'm just like, what? Why? What was the point of this? You got this little boy singing "Fortunate Son." It's like, why?
Just to show how much better music has become. Yep.
There's one other licensed track, and I can't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. I think it was stupid anyway. Maybe that's just me.
Maybe it is just you, Mark.
It sounds like it is just me because you two seem to like it a lot.
Yeah.
I think we talked about did we feel like the 1912s or the 1910s, 1912 I guess, whatever, was well represented in this setting? Like, did this feel like it took place in that time period?
I thought it would have been cooler. I mean, it's tough because in terms of the weaponry, like the arsenal that you get, because it's trying to depict a somewhat retro futuristic setting, you got to have like automatic guns and make it like as if it's a little further ahead. But like I would have almost preferred, because we're talking about the same, isn't it actually the same exact time or year? No, it's 1911 that the original Red Dead took place, wasn't it?
Oh, I thought that was the turn of the 20th century.
Maybe it was like 1905. I know it's like 1895 that the second one takes place.
Hold on, I'm looking it up. Vamp, talk about what you want to talk about.
Either way, I almost would have preferred like your weaponry to be cut. Like you only get a couple weapons, and it's like just like a revolver, or a shotgun, like maybe a lever action repeater or a bolt action rifle, and then some sort of explosive for bigger enemies, and like you were saying earlier, like a more extensive upgrade system that builds onto them with like weird tech or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you get almost like that Wild West feeling, because that's what the character of DeWitt, like the design you see on the cover, he looks like, you know, and I mean, he fought at Wounded Knee. Like he looks like a cowboy come back from the West.
That's something that we could also bring up real quick. Can we talk about how shitty the box art is for BioShock Infinite?
Yeah, it's pretty shitty.
It's so bad. I hate American box art because it's always like the whole. Do you guys know what the whole logic behind box art is when it comes to like Japanese box art versus American box art?
Explain, Mister. I've been to Japan.
All I know is Japanese box art is always better.
Yeah. So it's it's because Japanese box art focuses on finding a good piece of art to have on the cover. They care much more about that kind of aesthetic. And when what the Japanese do, they care much more about that kind of aesthetic when purchasing a video game. It's like a whole marketing thing. And again, it's a whole marketing thing. I mean, obviously, this is marketing.
I mean, you see, and I can understand that because the same thing you could see in the difference between manga and Western comics. That's why I've always preferred manga.
Yeah, and
manga is just forget about the fact that it's written better. The artwork is just vastly more. I don't want to shit on Western artists because there's some great ones, but like
without
anyway,
shitting on Western artists, to continue with Japanese box art focuses more on art, and North American box art it was found that people are more likely to buy a game in the West when there's a dude on the cover When there's a
Oh.
when there's a person, when there's a character on the cover.
Well, yeah, it's the
That's why-
marketing and
right.
the first person shooter. Yeah,
Right. So that's why you see so many cover arts on games in North America.
and
This extends to more than just video games, but it's just
it was also a big controversy back at that time period the game came out. The whole, the main character is another white man
hey,
broadcasting.
at least he's not. At least he didn't have a shaved head.
He didn't have a shaved. But you guys remember like all those articles coming out
Yeah, well,
about how boring, and there's some merit to that, definitely.
Yeah, no, there is 100%.
Yeah.
But like, this is another cover art with just some generic white dude on the cover.
Right.
Also, this came up in a podcast I was listening to recently, where Booker is not using proper trigger safety protocol.
Yeah. He just has the trigger.
He has his finger, on the trigger
of the shotgun.
with the shotgun on his shoulder, and it's like, bro.
Yeah.
you should. I know you're a badass and whatnot, but you should not be doing that. No matter who you are, you should not be doing that.
Just stick to the fucking claw in your hand, man.
But it's just so it's so boring and yet so edgy. There's like a burning American flag in the background, and Booker looking all brooding with a shotgun propped on his shoulder with a fucking finger on the trigger. It's just dumb. It's bad. It's bad box art. Like, at least.
Oh, sorry.
It's just like, at least the original BioShock had like a big daddy, and that was like, whoa, what is that? It's like this big dude in a diving suit with a drill. That's crazy.
Hell yeah.
Let's be honest. I mean, aside from the Songbird, which honestly, they should have put the Songbird on the cover. That
Songbird would have been
Yeah.
way cooler as a cover. Yeah.
Totally.
Like, even if it was like Songbird, like above, like
a burning
Booker
Columbia,
or Booker and Elizabeth just like looking up at Songbird while he's looking down at them with his wings spread. I'm like reenacting this on camera. No one listening can see this. You guys can, but like that would have been way better.
Yeah.
Almost like looking like the cover for The Last Guardian, except the Songbird's looking down at like Booker with a shotgun in his hand.
Yeah.
Staring at it,
But yeah, it's just bad cover art. I'm sorry, I derailed. I think it was Jason was talking about something, and I totally derailed just to talk about how bad the box art is. By the way, to finally go back to this, Red Dead Redemption 2 took place in 1899, and the Red Dead Redemption took place in 1911, so very close.
Okay.
The ultimate point I was trying to make, because you could see a lot of this in the aesthetic that they were going for with the city. I wish there's more Wild West elements, and then you just plant on some tech to it. So like the first weapon you get is the hand cannon, and then you get a shotgun, then like some sort of rifle, like a bolter or lever action, and then you get, and then you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
I do.
And then you get like those 4 weapons for the rest of the game, like, or something along those lines. Just something to make it have more of an identity, both apart and for gameplay purposes.
Yeah.
Agreed. I feel like we don't really need to talk about Columbia's lore. We talked enough about it, and kind of talked about it in like the voxophones, how it's just like not a whole lot is like really. I don't feel like the roots of Columbia are as well explained as the roots of like Rapture.
Right.
And like the most we really get is like, I think we do get an allusion to it was named Columbia after the female personification of the U.S., and we get some explanation, and I think this is mostly through through kinetoscopes, that eventually Columbia was like part of the U.S. and eventually seceded, which is interesting considering how
District of Columbia as well, but
again, yeah, but like, and it's kind of interesting considering like they're still, I feel, very inherently American and very, very patriotic, yet they secede.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole topic. You don't even need to go in it.
Yeah.
That's a weird topic, because like you look at like the historically, you look at like the secession of the South, like those guys were way into the founders, but they also believed the founders believed that they had a right to secede. Like,
I guess so.
so
Yeah.
you could argue like back and forth, but I found it actually somewhat weird how in the beginning it shows the statues of the founders and the people worshiping at them, and really the only payoff to that is like the fact that all the mechanized enemies, or almost all of them, look like U.S. presidents.
I mean,
Like there's
you see other big ass statues of George Washington, Ben Franklin, and
no, but I mean
Jefferson later.
it doesn't really have any like direct correlation to the story. I feel.
I mean, I guess just in the sense that they're all nationalists. They're all very patriotic in a way. It's
But
just
that's
paying...
so broad. That's
No,
so
I,
broad.
I do agree with you.
Yeah.
I like. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you. I'm trying to justify it as best I can without thinking that that's a very good justification. Like, yeah, I don't think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to talk about? How did we
I
feel?
think-
Actually, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Delilah.
No, you first. You first.
There is something I want to there is something I want to bring up before we move on and wrap up. Go to the final question, if you will. Because this is something I'm typically very skeptical of, and I actually think this game kind of accomplished it pretty well, which is handling the idea of parallel universes and handling the idea of time travel.
Hmm.
I don't think we've played a game yet that dealt with time travel, luckily. I hate when something tries
I'm pretty
to...
sure there's a Back to the Future adventure game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
Way
Telltale...
back, like
that was a Telltale game before Telltale got big.
yeah.
Yeah, I hate when games... But Back to the Future is one of the shining examples of something that does time travel right.
Yeah.
I typically don't think anything does time travel right. This game doesn't really do time travel. It just explores the concept of time. It's not so much time travel per se, even though
It's alternate realities.
well,
Yeah.
it's going through space time in
Yeah.
certain at certain points, at certain
It's a very
junctures.
Marvel comic universe
And
in that sense.
I think it accomplishes it well. There are people that can explore space-time, and they can allow other people to do it, but nothing inherently changes. Nothing changes. It's just there are an infinite number of realities, and they're able to peek into them and see what happens, and even maybe change what happens in that reality. But there's still an infinite number of realities that there's like a reality where that doesn't happen, and so on and so forth. We don't have to go
Like-
back into that.
Abstergo in Assassin's Creed.
Sure. I think there's a lot of merit behind how they handled that, especially coming from someone that, like I said, I'm very, very, very skeptical of any time these things come up, and I thought that they were well executed in this game.
I agree, and I liked how they tied. Like I was telling you, or at least my interpretation before, how I was talking to you guys about the cage, the card with the cage on it, that the old and wizened Elizabeth hands to DeWitt to give to her younger self. I like how they, at least in my interpretation, also tied in the idea of fate with that idea of multiple realities with multiple things not and perhaps occurring. It's almost like Terminator in that fashion, before Terminator decided that Judgment Day was inevitable.
Yeah. All right, now, do we have anything else before I get to the final question? Anything else you want to discuss?
There was just a lot. I don't know. Did anyone else get, and this is another comparison with BioShock, but like little sister vibes with Elizabeth at the end when like multiple Elizabeths came? There was
Yes.
like 3 of them. And yeah, they were just kind of like looking at Booker. It just reminded me of the good ending of BioShock, which I won't say any more on.
Yeah, I didn't put that together, but
I think they were trying to subtly pay homage to that, even though it
And
was
like
different.
Songbird was like like Big Daddy, and he was like protecting her.
Well,
Yes.
that was definitely with how they even go into how Songbird was imprinted on Elizabeth, or Elizabeth was imprinted on Songbird, whatever way that works. That was pretty similar and clearly similar to the little sister Big Daddy relationship. I didn't put together the thing at the end, but that's an interesting point.
I think a good point maybe they were trying to make is that going back to the idea of how gray it was and every side has its extremists. It's pointing at, Andrew Ryan was a fucking extremist. And look at what happened. Like, there will always be chaos brought about by extremists.
Yeah.
And I think that was, as much as I thought that to a degree that stuff was tacked on in this game to a character-driven story, I thought it was well done, even if it was tacked on.
Okay. Do we have any other points before I go to the final question?
What is the final question, Mark?
The final question is, we know for a fact, this is part of why we decided to do BioShock Infinite. We totally lucked out on the fact that it was a PlayStation Plus game for February, the same month we were planning on doing an episode of BioShock. But we know for a fact that there is a new BioShock game in development from 2K Games, a new developer a new studio that they announced is working on a new BioShock game. We know for a fact that's coming. We don't know when, obviously. If we had more details, we would probably be talking about them. But with us having a BioShock and a BioShock 2 taking place in Rapture, a city at the bottom of the sea, and BioShock Infinite with a city taking to the sky, let's call it. Where the hell can they have a weird city next? And where I guess more so, where do you think the city will be? Do you think we're going to go back to Rapture, Columbia, or do you think we're going to get a new city? What else could they possibly do?
I mean, what else could you do besides the sky and the deep seas, besides space?
That's what I was about to say. There's like literally one possible answer I could think, and that's space.
Well, if you wanted to go further back in time and have the game set in like the 1800s, there was lots of sci-fi being written about like moving cities, just literally cities on wheels that would just roam. So you could just have them fucking roaming like around the west and up north through like unexplored Canadian. I mean, it sounds dumb to us now,
what I'm picturing,
that's just an idea. I don't know.
What I'm picturing is kind of like that spider robot from the Wild Wild West movie, but it's like a city. It's just like crawling around the world.
Wild Wild West. I remember that music video, dude.
God,
Will Smith was my hero at that time.
What a product of the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, I think those are two really good options. I mean, I feel like the moving city, just like still on the ground, just moving around. I think that's a lot more interesting than having a city in space, because I feel like having space bases and stuff has also been overdone in this past generation.
It would basically, if you were to keep the BioShock style, it would basically be Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess we'll have to wait.
I
and
do
see.
hope that they introduce more choice again back into the game. That was something that I found severely lacking in this one, was choices to be made versus the original.
Mm-hmm.
What? Well, I don't want to.
The ending was the same.
But...
Well, yeah.
Oh, that okay. In that regard, yeah, sure. With the
not
endings.
just that, like not gameplay as well as like but the gameplay in the original is somewhat tied into the story, like you were just saying. And I guess that's a product of having such a character-driven story, primarily.
I mean, I would also just say that this game does have something to say about the illusion of choice, in that there's an infinite number of realities, and you're still given these choices, but it kind of in the end doesn't really matter. It kind of goes back to your whole point about the cage representing fate and destiny.
Hey man, but there's no fate but what we make for ourselves.
And on that note,
It's Terminator 2, best action movie of all time, folks.
I guess, yeah, we can wrap up. But before we wrap up, Jason, what's the Kwasnicki rating on this bad boy?
I don't know. I had fun with it. I had my problems, but I also have some really high marks for it. I had some really good moments. I think I'd give it a really solid 7
7 what?
out of 10.
7 what?
Oh,
He forgets this every time.
7 grains of salt.
7 grains of salt. That's so boring. You could have gone with 7 songbirds. You could have gone with 7 vigors. You went with 7 grains of salt.
7 little sisters.
They're not in this game.
Well, like Delaila was
7
saying,
bookers.
Elizabeth is essentially. I think that's the
7
point. Elizabeth is essentially the little sister of the game,
Oh my god.
Yeah.
All right. Fucking whatever.
and she
man.
was the best part of the game.
And you have now reached the end of this episode of Reap the Spoils, where Jason gave the fucking game 7 grains of salt out of 10.
I have 10 grains of salt to possibly give it. That's barely enough to send a crowd of murderous crows towards you.
God. Delaila, what are you doing?
Oh yeah, no, I'm just right now releasing a full playthrough of my 1999 run
Yeah.
of BioShock Infinite on YouTube.
Okay.
Assassina-san.
Okay.
She's also
You,
streaming.
Yeah, you streaming?
Yeah, I didn't stream last week because I've
Come
been
on,
doing these
Delaila.
videos, but I've been doing a bunch of recording for podcasts.
Unacceptable.
What podcasts?
So we just recorded 2 episodes of Completed or Beat It, which is the podcast where we review the game from a completionist lens. So we reviewed trophies, basically, or trophy roadmap. And we did Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, and Minute.
Oh.
And yeah. And we did that in person, actually. One of the guys came from Texas, and so we did it in my little setup here.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah, and also New York City Gamer Society podcast, which is a new thing. It's a group that my boyfriend created a long time ago, and it kind of like friends and people have come together, and there's like 1.4K members, and so they wanted a podcast, so we are creating a podcast that's tailored to the members, and that's also monthly. So that's been happening. Yeah. 2 episodes out.
Very cool. Well, if Delaila is your favorite part of this show, there's plenty more
She's
Delaila.
hustling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely not anyone's favorite part of any show.
Hey, that's not true.
Whoa.
That's not true.
Whoa.
That's not true, Delaila. You're my favorite part of this show.
Aw,
You are
thank
the songbird of the show.
Oh my god.
Aw, okay. That was
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
that's a good thing. A songbird is a friend if you know how to play a song.
Yeah, the notes are CAGE.
And you let out your most wildest shrill screech. Okay. Delilah's the only interesting person on this show that has actually something to plug. So the only other thing I'll plug is that you can follow me on Twitter at Nibelheimian. You can follow Delaila on Twitter at Assassina_san. You can follow Jason on Twitter at SolidQuaz, but don't follow him on Twitter. If you liked this episode, please, for all that is holy, if you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, leave us a rating and review us. 5 stars are preferred. Please review. Reviews would be great. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. And most importantly,
Tell us what you want to hear. If you got
yeah,
specific
actually,
games.
yeah. If there's something you want to, if there's a game you want to, we had one person on YouTube actually give us a suggestion for a game. It's something I'm kind of interested in. Maybe we'll do that down the line. But yeah, if there's something that you want us to play, want to hear us talk about, like, tell us. It's sometimes there's months where we're just like scrambling, like, oh, what do we play? Like, that would be great if someone could just tell us, play this, and we'll do it. Most importantly,
We'll do it.
share the
Do
show.
anything.
Share the show with your family, with your friends, with your parents, with your kids, with your dog, with your cat, with your therapist. I don't care. Just like share the show. Preach the good word of these three idiots reaping the spoils of games. The last thing we'll say is we were alluding to it earlier, and I'll just go ahead and say it here. After this episode goes up, probably about a week after this episode goes up, we'll be putting out another episode, probably a lot shorter than this one. I hope a lot shorter than this one.
Should be.
On the DLC for BioShock Infinite, Burial at Sea. We feel there's a lot to talk about with this DLC, but we didn't want to include it in this episode because A, there's a lot to talk about with just the base game as a whole, and B, we figured not the same number of people that played the base game would play this DLC, so we didn't want to spoil the DLC for everyone that played the base game but didn't play it yet. So we will be putting out that as a separate episode. If you played the Burial at Sea DLC, you can look forward to that roughly a week later.
Cliffhanger.
And Delaila, what's the next game, the next full game we're planning on playing and talking about?
Oh, a game that's way less convoluted and confusing and philosophical. A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da.
We're going to be talking about rats.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a month for that.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. I think it takes place in France.
God,
Yeah.
Like them baguettes.
fucking French.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I'm going to have to edit so much in that episode. All right.
I do it just for you, Mark. Just for you.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Reap the spoils.